Hey everybody, Rock DIY here. I want to integrate the table saw and the miter saw into a table that I'm going to build right here. And I've just finished all of my cuts of 2x4s, 2x6s, plywood, furring strips, and then I've got some caster wheels that I haven't received yet. Here is all of the 2x4s that I cut, and they're all numbered. So I got the size and then what step it is written on each block, just to make it a lot easier to put it all together. And I've also got this piece of pegboard that I'll be using, and then all my plywood is cut right there that I need. And as I put this together, I will show a sequence of how it's put together. What's pretty awesome about this project for making the workshop table with the table saw and miter saw is that almost all of this is scrap material or repurposed wood. The rest of what I needed came in today, all came at once. I did already have these and these and those, but these came today and these came today. These and these both were ordered from Amazon. I have 2 boxes of the caster wheels because I need 6, but they come in 4s, so I had to buy 2 boxes. So I have 8 caster wheels and only need 6. But these are 4-inch caster wheels that can be screwed into the bottom of the table, and they also are locking caster wheels. And I've also got these shaft with set screws. Those will go on to the 1/2-inch solid steel bar that I bought that will be used to rotate the table for the miter saw. Then I've also got these T-nuts. These are pronged T-nuts, and I got 4 of those, 4 of these, and I've got 4 barrel bolts, and these are 4-inch barrel bolts. And then I've also got these steel spacers, and these are solid steel spacers. They do sell other ones that have a split in them, but based on what I'm using them for, it would not be good to have that split in the spacer. So now I have everything I need to start putting my table together. I finished this workbench that has the table saw and the miter saw, and I was going to put a Ryobi miter saw on here, but it's pretty much on its last leg, so I ended up getting the DeWalt DWS 780. That is much heavier than the Ryobi, but it's newer and has more functions on it than this one. They're similar, but this is an upgrade and much heavier. What I did initially is cut all my boards, and then that was one day, and then the next day started putting it together. And one of the regrets I have is I probably should have looked at the wood that I purchased a little bit better. Actually, probably should have looked at it a lot better than I did. Kind of went with assuming that issues would not occur towards the end of the build. And where my issues are, you can probably see, is here. You can see it's not straight. and then over here, not straight. And it seems like all you would have to do is cant it just a little bit, but there's some curvature in the 2x4s that I didn't catch. And so I can kind of push it to where I want it, but it goes right back where it was. So I'm gonna disassemble this table and start over from scratch just on the flip table for the miter saw. The rest of it came out pretty good. It's pretty level from here to here because of the warpage in the tabletop. It doesn't sit flat. You can see way down on that end, down a little bit over here, level here, and above here. And then also because of these swivel pins, when I flip this tabletop, it doesn't line up and it scrapes and everything. So yeah, unfortunately, I mean, there's nothing wrong with the plans. It's just this portion of it did not turn out right. The part for the table saw actually turned out really well. There's some minor adjustments that need to be made, but the tabletop is level with the side here and the side here. It does slide back and forth without any issues because of the groove in the front and the back. Yeah, I'll probably have to shim it a little bit, and then what I'm going to do is once I get it shimmed at just the right height and everything, then what I'll do is I'll put some long wood screws through the frame on the table saw to keep it where it needs to be at all times. One other issue with this plan is if you plan on using a dust collection system, it's a little difficult to get back there. This gap right here is only about 3 inches, so you may have to pull your table saw out and then hook up your system and then push it back in, depending on how you decide to do it. And if you leave it like that, you're definitely going to end up with a ton of sawdust everywhere. The good thing about having this piece of plywood in here is that it does prevent it from just going everywhere. It pretty much keeps it over here. There is a pegboard over on this side, so I can put some pegboard hooks on here and hang some stuff that are specific to the miter saw or the table saw. Probably just for the tables, or for the miter saw, because the table saw is on the opposite end. May just put some clamps or whatever over here. And these wheels that I purchased, they actually roll really well. I almost feel like I bought skateboard wheels because of the colors, but they roll pretty good and roll easily over stuff that might be on the floor. This is where my flip table would be for my miter saw, but I've got a piece of 3/4 inch plywood sitting up here, using it as a temporary table. There was so much warpage in this wood that I made a ton of measurements trying to figure out where it was off. My table, when the table was on there, I had it all set up ready to go, and it was canted off to the side rather than straight. And then even if I flipped it over, it would be worse. So I went and actually bought some more wood and carefully looked at it to make sure that it was straight. But unfortunately, the wood that I bought to replace the one over there, the one over there, I took the 2x6s out and used regular 2x4s. 2x6s were still warped, so I went with this option instead, and it's still off some. It was really pretty much out of square. The difference between this corner to that corner and this corner to that corner was about a 1/2 inch different. What I ended up doing is putting these 45s in here that are out of the way of the swing of the table. You can see where I traced how the table swings so that it won't hit anything. And I put those in there to brace it. It could be a permanent thing because I really can't store anything underneath it. So these should be okay underneath there. But then top itself wasn't really working out because also the plywood that was on top was warped. So whenever the table was up here, you'd have one corner way up, one way down, and it was really off. So what I ended up doing is I've got this resin board. These are defective pieces from my son's work, so I'm gonna put them to good use. And what I did, they're 1/4 inch thick. You might be able to see them over there. There's still a stack of them, and I've used them for my walls all around the shop. And that pile is supposed to be to finish it, but I'm going to use this. And so I've got a 36-inch piece here, 36-inch piece here, and then a 32.5-inch piece. The 36s will go in it like this, and then the 32.5 will go across the back side. I've got my pivots here for these rods that will go inside the center of the table, and these are glued and also screwed. Originally I started with some landscape adhesive, but it's way too thick, and so I had to go to a super glue, and super glue worked out a little bit better, but the screws and the glue will keep them together pretty good. Initially what I'm going to have to do is glue these to this top piece, and the top piece is actually 2 pieces that are glued together, and then the center was glued all the way everywhere with super glue, and then I clamped it, and then also put some bricks on top to weigh it down so that it would adhere good. These 36-inch long pieces are made up of 6 individual pieces here, all of them. So this one's 6, 6, and 6. The pivot point here is 1 3/8 down from the top, and then 18 to center, 18 to center. I believe it's 2 1/8 from bottom to center there. These are the only 2 that have holes drilled in them. That piece will not have a hole drilled in it. As I was saying, these will be initially glued and clamped, and then once it's dry, I'll come back and put screws from the bottom side. With the wood, could have used the Craig pocket holes, but I'm kind of concerned about this stuff. I mean, this stuff's okay, but when you drill it, when the drill gets hot, it produces a gas that makes it pop, which can catch you off guard. So you got to go real slow, pull the drill bit out, clean it, put it back in. If you just keep going, it's going to pop and snap every time. That is where I'm at. Get this glued and stuck together, and go on. This is the completed flip table. I did put some pocket screws, 1.5-inch pocket screws in here, and the only reason I put pocket screws is because the other screws, the self-tap screws that I was using, kept breaking, so the heads were spinning off, so I had to stop using those. And then originally I put them in flush, and then I was like, well, it kind of defeats the whole purpose of having a flush table if you got a bunch of screw heads sticking out of the top, so it's not going to be smooth. So I went back over it using this Craig pocket hole drill bit to bring it down some, and then I put the pocket screws in there. Got it. That's not only not what they're used for, but that's what I used. And I put screws about every 6 inches, and then I also made sure I put them in the corners. One issue I did have is that these must not be great drill bits. I did buy these at Northern Tool recently, and I had 2 snap off right there. After the second one broke, gave up on those and used a different one, thicker one, and I didn't want to go thicker because I didn't want the screws not to bite, and these are coarse screws. So the other thing I had to do is here, where all these pieces are joined together, I did have to put a clamp when I drilled it, and then when I put the screw in, because I didn't drill all the way down because I wanted the screw end to bite into the epoxy. resin, and so I would clamp it, because what was happening is when the screw got down to the bottom, it would crack these pieces apart. Even though they're screwed together, you can hear it pop. So I put the clamp on there just to keep it in place. This thing is a beast. It's pretty heavy, way too heavy. And then on top of having that, I'm gonna have to put that miter saw on it, which is very heavy. But hopefully this all balances out. When I finish with this, what I will probably do is do some sanding in a couple spots. There's like some overage in a couple spots. There is a little spot right here that sticks out that needs to come off. Other than that, this thing should stay together pretty well. Work table's coming along. Got the table saw in. Ended up doubling the plywood on the top in order to make it flat with the rest of the table all the way across. So the table saw is bumped up 3/4 of an inch, but it's flush across, and the fence moves back and forth easily. Got some storage space there, some storage space underneath. I need to put the board or a piece of plywood back underneath, and that's going to help prevent all that sawdust from going all the way across, even though eventually a dust collection hose will be hooked up to the back of the table saw. And then here is the flip table for the miter saw. And as discussed previously, this didn't quite work out the way that it was supposed to be. I do got my locks on all 4 corners. I did end up putting these diagonal supports in. They may not need to stay there, but they're not in the way of anything. And you really can't use that space under there if you're flipping the miter saw underneath. So you might have a little space over here and a little bit of space over there. But you do have a pegboard that's going on this far side, so you can hang stuff on the side that may be needed for the miter saw or your table saw. And what I've got glued and clamped right now is it's 2 1/2-inch pieces of blonde sanded plywood, and those 2 pieces are going to go underneath the DeWalt miter saw. So that will be screwed into those, and then the whole entire thing will be screwed into the base here, and then there'll be some T-nuts used so that the back side or the bottom side of this will still be flat, but you'll see the T-nuts countersunk so that you don't really see them. And so once I get that put on the plywood, that'll go on there. And then the big thing is making sure that you get full movement left and right. If you put it too far back, you're not going to get the full far left and right. So bring it forward some, and in my case this is 32 inches across, so 16 was center, with it was 4 3/8 or 4 1/4 gap on both sides, based on the width of the miter saw. Front to back, this thing is pretty long. It's well, the sawdust bag on the back of it's going to come off. There'll be a hose that gets hooked up to it, but this one's a little different than my previous miter saw, but it is pretty long. From front to back, it'll actually fit. It's coming along. I've had some issues putting screws into these slats that I cut from the resin boards. Even though I pre-drilled, whenever I put the screws in, it would separate them, even though they're glued and screwed, but they'll pop apart. So now I've got some epoxy that I went out and got and lathered it all over these front corners here, And then I also put the epoxy all the way down, across, and then back this way, just to give it a stronger bond. Even though there's plenty of screws in it, a lot of glue in it, I want to make sure that this stays together. My concern is the weight of that on this resin board. The resin board with 2 1/4-inch pieces glued together, 1/2 inch thick. It's what I would have used if I had used wood. I think this stuff would actually be stronger. If I could, I'm not sure if I can, but if I can, I do want to put a brace going across the front here. But I would only do that if it's not going to interfere with anything, because the back and the sides are all supported. My concern is that the center is going to start sagging, even though the weight is evenly distributed. Hopefully it won't sag. Here's where I'm at with the flip top for the miter saw. We've got these 1/4-inch bolts that have a hex head on the other end. And what I did was put 2 or 3 washers on them, and then use the drill to tighten it down. I did put some super glue in here. In fact, I used this B680 super glue. It works pretty good. That is my second bottle, and I'm almost out of it. But the reason why I put the bolts in here and then tighten it down is I wanted this T-nut to be tight and really bond with the super glue. So now I'll be taking those off, and I had to go to the store and buy these 1/4-inch number 20, and these are 2.5 inch long. I need them that long because I got to go through 1.5 on the miter saw and the 1 inch thick plywood there, in order to get it to attach to this top. So that is going to be the last step. So I'll be removing these bolts, putting these in to hold the miter saw in, and then the next step will be to put it on, tighten it down, and then take it for a spin. Not quite the same thing, but see how it works out. In the instructions that came with the plans that I bought, exact placement on where to put the miter saw is not in the instructions. The only thing it really says is place it so that the front and the back fit within the turntable. I guess flip table, not turntable. But in this case, this is a really long miter saw, so no matter what, it's going to stick a little bit out the front, and or it's going to stick out the back, which is okay because it turns over pretty easily without hitting anything. And then as far as the rest of the placement, it talks about drilling the holes and everything, doesn't tell you exactly where it's, because you can put it front to back the best you can, but there's also a center of balance on the miter saw. But of course it's dependent on where you have it, as far as forward or back, or before you flip it, do you always pull it all the way forward and then lock it down? But one of the things I did is I have a railing right outside my shop door, and I put this on it with the saw all the way forward and locked down, and then I just kind of balanced it on the handrail to get a better idea of where the center of balance is. And it gave me a better idea of better placement on here, because the top does have a center point. And so that's what I did. You can completely guess or whatever you want to do. So right now is going to be my first test of flipping this to see how well it does. It almost completely rolls over all the way. So there it is, hanging upside down. You can see here where the T-nuts are, and I'm gonna have to shave the ends of these bolts off. They're all supposed to be 2.5, but for some reason they're all sticking out at different lengths. So it leads me to believe they're not the same exact size. But I have to take a cutoff wheel and shave those down in order to keep the top as smooth as possible. I'm actually surprised. I thought the miter saw would take up quite a bit of room underneath, but it looks like I might be able to still put some stuff down there that the miter saw won't interfere with, but it'll probably be on the extremes, like out here, even though I will have a pegboard on this end for hanging some stuff, and then there's a solid board on the other side, but I'll still be able to put stuff in there, get stuff out of the way, because I got a lot of stuff that needs to be put away. Everything seems to sit on tabletops, and the tabletops are what I need in order to do the work that I need to do.